I was 50 when the man I had dedicated my entire existence to decided I was obsolete. The setting for my dismissal was the manor on Elm Street, at the same kitchen table where I had managed our finances, cooked countless dinners, and helped our son, Julian, with his most challenging schoolwork. Marcus couldn't meet my eyes. He stared into the steam of his coffee and announced, "Clara, I think we've outgrown each other." Outgrown? As if I were a piece of discarded furniture. We had been married for 27 years. I was the one who stalled my career at the bank, forgoing a significant promotion because Marcus's hours were too unstable and Julian needed a stable home base. I was the meticulous engine of that household. I cooked, cleaned, meticulously balanced our books, and cared for his sick mother for nearly 2 years without a single complaint. Asked for very little in return, only basic loyalty and respect. Instead, I received divorce papers on a Tuesday and was silenced by Wednesday. By the close of the month, Marcus had moved out, claiming he needed space. The truth was darker. He hadn't sought a hotel. He had moved in with Serafina, the woman he'd introduced 2 years prior as an associate from accounting. She was 34, the exact age of Julian. Marcus possessed neither the shame nor the decency to keep their new life quiet. Within weeks, their overly cheerful photographs flooded social media. They were smiling on sun-drenched beaches and sipping expensive wine in Sonoma. I, meanwhile, sat isolated in the manor on Elm Street, a house I had built from nothing, surrounded by furniture I chose, staring at empty chairs. Julian, 25 and grown, tried to maintain neutrality. "Mom, I don't want to take sides," he confessed. I simply assured him, "You don't have to. I already know precisely where everyone stands." The true insult arrived one morning in the mail. The letter was not from Marcus, but from Serafina. It was printed on shockingly pink stationery, looking like a saccharine invitation. It read, "Dear Clara, please schedule a time to collect the remaining remnants of your belongings. Marcus and I are settling into our new life, and we'd prefer to commence this fresh chapter without unnecessary interruptions. Mornings are best. Hugs, Serafina Foster." Serafina Foster. She had taken my name, moved into my home, and had the audacity to categorize me as an interruption. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the offensive pink note. My herbal tea grew stone cold, yet I barely noticed. My hands were vibrating, not from sorrow, but from a focused, burning rage. That house, the manor on Elm Street, was mine. We purchased it jointly, but I was the one who provided the substantial down payment after working grueling double shifts at the bank. Crucially, my name remained legally on the deed and the mortgage documents. Marcus, citing that it was too much of a hassle, had never bothered to refinance or alter the title. That perceived hassle was about to become the single greatest financial and logistical problem of his life. I immediately called Sylvia, my oldest friend and a sharp-witted lawyer for 2 decades. After I detailed the audacity of the pink note and their move, she fell silent. "Do you still have your name on the deed, Clara?" she finally asked. "Yes, he never changed it," I confirmed. "And he never bought out your half of the equity?" "No," I said. Sylvia spoke slowly, methodically. "Clara, that means you still legally own half that house. You don't have to beg. You can file for what's called a partition action. You can force a sale." I had one final, crucial question. If they cannot afford to buy me out, will they be compelled to vacate the premises? "Yes, they absolutely will," Sylvia affirmed. I gazed out the window at the climbing roses I had planted the previous spring. They were blooming beautifully, indifferent to the chaos inside the walls. I took a deep, steady breath. "Do it," I commanded. Marcus called me 2 days later, his voice heavy with wounded pride and feigned concern. "Clara, did you actually retain a lawyer? What's the point of making this entire process harder than it needs to be?" I replied calmly, already made it hard. "I'm simply returning the favor." He immediately tried to manipulate me, attempting to instill guilt. He called me bitter, insisted I needed to move on, and whined that Serafina wasn't comfortable with my presence. I did not raise my voice. I simply drove the stake deep. Then perhaps she shouldn't be residing in a house that still has my legal name on the title, I said. Marcus instantly hung up the phone. Serafina followed up with an email, dripping with attitude. She claimed I was humiliating myself, insisting I should gracefully permit younger people to be happy. She wrote that Marcus deserved a fresh start and that I was stubbornly clinging to a marriage that had died years ago. I did not respond. Instead, I contacted Sylvia again. Let's turn up the heat, I instructed. We filed the official court documentation. The petition was flawless, clean, airtight, and unassailable. I wasn't generating noise. I was executing strategic, calculated moves. Marcus and Serafina were utterly blindsided. Sylvia advised me to maintain total silence and allow the court system to deliver the blow. However, when I drove past the house and saw Serafina's stark white BMW parked brazenly in my customary spot, I had to pull over and collect myself. I hadn't come to orchestrate a scene. I was there to retrieve the final boxes of my belongings, as Serafina's pink note had suggested. I didn't bother knocking. I used my key, the one Marcus, in his profound self-absorption, had forgotten I possessed because he had never bothered to change the locks. I walked into what had once been my living room. The couch was familiar, but everything else felt unnervingly alien. The walls were painted a lifeless, pale beige, giving the room the sterile ambience of a hotel lobby. All my family photographs were gone, replaced by aggressively cheerful framed slogans like "Good vibes only" and "Love wins." It looked as though Pinterest had aggressively vomited all over 27 years of my memories. I stepped into the kitchen. Serafina had completely reorganized the space. My spice rack was missing, and the antique mason jar I used to store tea bags now contained organic lollipops. A tight, burning fire of indignation built in my gut. Serafina drifted downstairs, wearing one of Marcus's oversized, old t-shirts. She froze when she saw me standing there. "What on earth are you doing here?" she demanded. "I came to retrieve my things," I stated, holding up the email she had sent me. "You were supposed to schedule a specific time," she snapped, attempting to establish boundaries and rules. I walked past her, my movements slow and utterly tranquil. "Well, sweetheart," I said softly, "as long as my name is still legally on this house, I will come and go precisely as I please." Her face instantly flushed crimson. "Marcus will hear about this," she seethed. "Good," I replied. He should have been the one to greet me. I packed quietly, a few boxes of books, a cherished necklace for my mother. I didn't need to take much, because I had already determined that I would never reside in the manor on Elm Street again, not because I couldn't, but because I refused to grant them the perverse satisfaction of believing they had successfully driven me out. Serafina shadowed me, arms rigidly crossed, eyes rolling with theatrical impatience. She muttered something under her breath. Pathetic. I stopped dead in the hallway. "Excuse me?" She straightened up, clearly ready for confrontation. "You couldn't hold on to your husband, so now you're reduced to playing these petty, vindictive games. You're jealous because he wanted someone better." My voice remained even, unwavering. I did not flinch. "Better doesn't last, dear," I said. "And I am not playing games. I am simply claiming what is legally and rightfully mine." Then I walked out. That evening, Sylvia called to confirm that the court had officially accepted the petition action. Marcus and Serafina were scheduled to be formally served notification the following morning. "Do you want to have the satisfaction of delivering it yourself?" Sylvia asked.
"No," I said.
"Let the system deliver the slap." The subsequent day, Marcus called me 4 times. I ignored every ring. He left one frantic voicemail. "Clara, what are you doing? This is insane. You're forcing us to sell the house after everything I've supposedly done for you." I laughed out loud. I was the one who sacrificed promotions, stayed through layoffs, cooked every meal, and paid half the bills. He didn't walk out, he did. He called again the next day, and I ignored him again. On the 3rd day, I answered. "Clara, we need to talk."
"So talk."
"Why are you doing this?" "You mean, Forcing the sale of a house I still legally co-own? You are aware that you cannot afford to buy me out right now, are you not? His tone shifted, attempting to revert to the comforting softness of the man I used to know. Clara, you don't need this kind of undue stress. No, I corrected him. You don't need this stress. But you brought it upon yourself. Then I hung up. 2 days later, Serafina called. She didn't text, she actually called. She was audibly sobbing. You're ruining us, Clara. You are humiliating us. Please, just be a woman about this. I paused, absorbing her pathetic attempt at manipulation. Being a woman, Serafina, I stated, means knowing your self-worth. And I am utterly done shrinking for the benefit of either you or Marcus. Then I blocked her number. From that moment onward, I spoke no more words to either of them. I allowed Sylvia to manage all communication and the court paperwork to wield the cutting edge. Marcus and Serafina hired a high-priced lawyer to challenge the partition action, but the attempt was futile. The judge meticulously reviewed the deed and the mortgage documents. The judge pronounced the magic words, Miss Beaumont remains a legal co-owner. Unless the parties reach an immediate private buyout agreement, the property must be sold. I did not smile back in the courtroom. I was still observing, still waiting. They still had their keys in their kitchen, but now they also possessed a concrete deadline, 60 days to either buy my half or vacate. I knew they were financially incapable of either option. Serafina wasn't employed, Marcus's salary remained unchanged, and they now faced crippling legal fees. I drove past the manor on Elm Street one morning and noticed a crude for sale by owner sign hammered into the lawn. They were desperately trying to rush an undermarket sale. But the real estate market was unyielding, and karma shows no favoritism. I sat down at my new kitchen table, in my small but wonderfully peaceful rental unit, and lit a candle. This fire was not for their destruction, but for my restoration. They were moments away from understanding what it truly felt like to be erased from something you foolishly believed you owned. Serafina began posting vague, dramatic quotes on her social media. Some women don't know when to let go. Bitterness will rot your soul. I was uninterested. This wasn't spiritual warfare. This was cold, hard law. By the third week, the amateur for sale sign was gone. It was replaced by a clean, professionally printed now listed placard. Sylvia had made a few discreet calls. We weren't going to permit them to sell the house cheaply. If the property was going to change hands, it would be at absolute fair market value. This was a mandated, clean split, meaning they had to cooperate with us. Marcus texted me again, this time without anger. We need to discuss the staging of the house. I did not reply. He tried again. Can you please not remove absolutely everything? Serafina is feeling exposed right now. I took a breath and forwarded the message to Sylvia. I let the walls slowly close in on them. I let them walk past the bedroom I had slept in for 27 years and wonder what other hidden knowledge they lacked. By the time the property showings commenced, they were actively unraveling. Serafina called the listing agent in tears, begging to delay viewing times until they secured a new place. The agent politely reminded her that this was a court-ordered sale, not an optional choice. It was a firm requirement. Julian told me that Marcus was frequently sleeping alone on the living room couch. They were fighting constantly, and Marcus had reportedly told Serafina, "This is what happens when you poke a bear." I was not a bear, however. I was the legally binding deed. They didn't just underestimate me, they misunderstood the nature of my silence entirely. I was the kind of woman who signed legal documents with a steady hand and waited patiently for the storm I had planted to achieve its full bloom. In the 5th week, an offer materialized, full asking price, 0 contingencies. The buyers were a young black couple, excitedly expecting their first child. They requested a rapid, 2-week close. Perfect, I declared. Marcus attempted to call me 3 times that afternoon, but I didn't answer. I was at my nail appointment, selecting a new shade called Brick Dust. I appreciated the symbolism. That evening, I checked my voicemail messages. Marcus's final message on the 3rd call was telling, "I know we ended badly, but this is vindictive. You're not leaving us with anything." It was the first time he had openly referred to himself and Serafina as a unit, as though his act of betrayal had somehow matured into something legitimate. The day of the final walkthrough arrived. Marcus and Serafina had to be out of the house for 4 hours. The buyers had already scheduled their movers. There was no more time. The moment they left that house, they ceased being owners. They were nothing more than trespassers holding keys that were about to stop working.
Me?
I was exactly $370,000 richer. Marcus finally broke his silence in person. He appeared at my new, quiet 2-bedroom unit with a garden view, knocking on the door as if he still retained some right to enter. I opened the door but made no invitation for him to step inside. He looked remarkably small, shrunken, as though the weight of his lies had finally caught up to his posture. "I came to ask you something," he mumbled. "Can you please help us with a deposit on our new rental place? We're short on funds."
I stared at him.
"Excuse me? We had no idea you would pursue this so aggressively. We thought you thought I'd stay quiet." I finished for him. He nodded, shamefaced. "You've never been the spiteful type." "I'm not spiteful, Marcus." I corrected him evenly. "I am strategic. There is a profound difference." He shifted awkwardly on the porch. "Serafina is staying temporarily with her sister. I'm living in a hotel near Oak Ridge." He sighed. "I genuinely didn't think it would end like this." "You ended it," I reminded him firmly. "You made your choices. You moved her into my house before the ink on our divorce papers was even dry." He had the nerve to look hurt. "We were in love," he whispered. "Love doesn't steal," I countered. "Love doesn't lie. And love damn sure doesn't send me a letter on pink paper demanding I schedule pickups like a delivery stranger." His eyes dropped to the floor. "You didn't just replace me, Marcus. You attempted to erase me. So, I simply did the same to you." He stood there for a silent moment, then nodded slowly. There was no argument, no outburst, just the quiet, heavy understanding that follows true defeat. As he walked away, I didn't immediately close the door. I watched him retreat, and I smiled because sometimes justice comes with a signature on a dotted line and the sound of a man realizing he staked his entire future on someone who never bothered to comprehend the legal fine print. A week after the sale closed, the house I helped build became someone else's fresh start. I didn't cry or drive by the property. Sylvia and I celebrated over lunch. She toasted me. "Clara, you did what most people only dream of doing. You made them feel exactly what they made you feel, powerless." It was about restoration, peace, closure, and yes, a necessary pinch of vengeance too. Marcus and Serafina had officially vacated 2 days before closing. The house was left clean, but cold, like a hotel room after checkout. Julian called me that evening. "Mom," he said, his voice hesitant. "Dad's not coping well. He said something about his credit being shot, and Serafina is blaming him for everything that happened." "She absolutely should blame him," I stated plainly. He permitted her to act like a queen in a castle that was never truly his. Later that same week, I received an email from Serafina. It began with a standard, faux politeness, then launched into a long complaint about their difficulties finding a new residence. She asked if I would consider loaning them a fraction of the house sale money to assist them in getting back on their feet. She even possessed the appalling nerve to write, "After all, it's not like you need the money as desperately as we do." I stared at the computer screen for a long, slow time, blinking. Then I hit the delete key. No engagement, no reply, no reaction. That profound silence, I knew, would be infinitely louder than any response I could formulate. I spent the next few weeks submerged in deep peace. I took a part-time position at the local library, a job that was quiet, respectful, and surrounded by stories. I had my own small place now, nothing extravagant, but entirely mine. No shared deed, no need for approval, just space, solitude, and the slow process of healing. One afternoon, while shelving books, an old acquaintance recognized me. She said, "Clara, I heard what happened. You handled that whole situation with immense grace." Then she leaned in and whispered, "And profound power." That word resonated deeply. I realized it takes a unique strength to endure total humiliation and quietly, intentionally, construct something superior in its aftermath. A few days later, I saw Marcus again, not by choice. I noticed a man sitting hunched on a bench outside the pharmacy. He looked profoundly tired, his hair unkempt, his shirt wrinkled. He saw me and stood up abruptly. "Clara." "Hey." I simply nodded and continued walking toward my vehicle.
He followed me.
"I'm not looking for an altercation," he insisted. "I just wanted to talk." "Talk about what, Marcus?" I asked. He shifted on his feet. I didn't think you had it in you. The court filings. The house. Everything." I leaned against my car door. "You thought I was too weak to fight back." He rubbed his face wearily.
"No."
"I thought you'd be too tired." "Well," I said softly, "I guess you miscalculated." He let out a bitter, sad chuckle. "Serafina left me," he revealed. "Already?" I asked. "She claimed I embarrassed her," he said. "She said she gave up everything for a man who couldn't even keep a roof over her head." "And is she wrong?" I asked. He offered no reply. I opened my car door. "Good luck, Marcus." I didn't owe him another conversation, not anymore. When I returned home that evening, I opened the file Sylvia had given me weeks ago. It contained all the paperwork, including a handwritten note from Sylvia. "You didn't just cash out, Clara. You cashed in on your peace." I made myself a glass of wine, lit a candle, and turned on the radio. For the first time in countless years, the silence around me wasn't loneliness, it was absolute freedom. About 2 months later, I received another letter. No return address, but I recognized the slanted, rushed handwriting of Serafina. It was a protracted guilt trip on paper, a whimper disguised as passive aggression. She said I had ruined 2 lives and shattered a future. Near the bottom, she scribbled, "Hope it was worth it." I folded the letter neatly and slid it beneath a coaster. It was worth it. Every second of silence, every signature, every tear I never let them see. Julian invited me to dinner that week. He fidgeted with his napkin. "Mom, I want to say thank you," he started. "For what, sweetheart?" "For not letting him get away with it," he replied. "I didn't know how to stop him, but you did. You didn't just lose a husband. You lost your dignity in that marriage. And then you turned around and took it all back, on your terms." "I didn't do it to punish him, baby," I explained. "I did it so I could breathe again. So the next woman like me doesn't feel she has to disappear simply because someone else claimed she wasn't enough." A week later, Sylvia coerced me into speaking at a women's seminar. When I looked around the room at the tired eyes and the tightly folded arms, I saw the woman I used to be, the one who thought staying silent was the same as staying strong. I stood up and told them everything. How I got free, not through rage or begging, but through knowing the power of timing, the strength of strategy, and the definitive value of a signature on the right piece of paper. When I finished, one woman hugged me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "You reminded me that it's not too late." It's never too late. That night, I opened a new, untouched journal and wrote, "This is not a second chapter. This is a whole new book." The next morning, Sylvia called with an update. The young couple who bought the manor on Elm Street had painted the back office into a sunny nursery and converted my old garden into a vegetable patch. That house deserved love and laughter again. As for Marcus, the last I heard, he was renting a cheap condo in a strip mall complex, rooming with a guy who charged him for using the washer and dryer. Serafina completely vanished from social media. I don't really care because the day they decided I was expendable, they handed me the match. All I did was strike it. I took the money from the house sale, over $370,000 after fees and taxes, and I made a plan. Sylvia and I met with a financial planner who told me, "Let's make sure this money outlives the betrayal." I invested half and purchased a small, modern condo solely in my name. Everything from the light switch to the mailbox belonged to me. I disappeared socially and emotionally. I moved 2 states away to a quiet town in northern Arizona or New Mexico, as specified in the source, far from anyone who would ever introduce me as Marcus's ex-wife. Here, people know me as Miss Beaumont, the woman who volunteers at the animal shelter and bakes too much banana bread. No one knows that my silence once fed someone else's ego. Once, last fall, I received an email from Marcus. The subject line said simply, "I'm sorry." I didn't even open it. I deleted it on sight. Sometimes silence is the final answer, the kind of silence that closes doors permanently. I realized I wasn't done planting. I took a portion of the sale money, $50,000, and anonymously donated it to a local women's legal fund. The note I sent with the wire transfer said, "For the women who don't yet know they're allowed to fight back." The fund director later wrote that the donation helped several women escape abusive situations and file life-changing lawsuits. That is what real legacy looks like. Not just surviving the storm, but lighting a torch for the women still stuck in the dark. Marcus didn't just lose a wife. He lost access to my loyalty, my softness, and my silence. Serafina lost the illusion that she could build happiness on someone else's ashes and not get burned. They both learned a crucial lesson. Never assume the quiet ones are weak. Never assume the woman you wronged has nothing left to lose. Because sometimes she's just waiting for the right moment. And when that moment comes, she won't yell. She won't cry. She'll cash out, and you'll be left homeless, not just without a roof, but without peace. Now, when I slowly sip from my mug that says unbothered and paid, I do so deliberately. I have earned every ounce of this peace, and I intend for it to last a lifetime. I sleep well, I laugh often, and I never answer blocked calls. That's not revenge. That's recovery.